So welcome to another Impact Sessions podcast with me, Nick Bramley. This week we're talking about a genuine passion for UK manufacturing, and I'm delighted to have as my guest a lady who is, shall we say, a titan of the Yorkshire manufacturing community. I've got Tracey Dawson. She's the Managing Director of Dell Tech Electronics, but there's so much more to Tracey and in terms of her kind of passion for UK manufacturing. So without further ado, welcome to the Impact Sessions, Tracey.
Good morning, Nick. Thank you very much for having me and
No problem.
to invite me to talk about my passion for manufacturing.
Well, it's clear from everything that you do, every post that you make, every time I've interacted with you, you know, the DNA says manufacturing. I did notice actually, though, you didn't come from a manufacturing background in your early career. When I looked at your LinkedIn profile, you were sort of administrative, secretarial kind of administration jobs, weren't you, that kind of stage?
Well, originally, actually, I was a beauty therapist.
Oh, wow, okay. I didn't go that far back.
No, you're quite right, a long way back. Yeah, my background was, I met my late husband, actually, and worked with him. And he was a very clever electronic engineer, way before his time in many ways. We had the first satellite dish manufacturing company in the UK. We were manufacturing 1.8 metre dishes.
Wow.
We did a number of other things, including, you might remember the travel lodges.
Yeah.
And little chefs, when they started to erect the travel lodges next to the little chefs, we got the contract from Thorney MI to convert the 14J1 TV into a radio clock alarm TV.
Oh, wow, okay.
So they sent the TVs to us. We then took the front off them, put the mod on them, and sent them back out to the little chefs.
Wow.
And Colin and I spent one summer going around the country visiting all the little chefs to make sure, the travel lodges, to make sure they were in place.
I'll be honest with you. You'll know your way around a little chef cooked English breakfast, then, do you?
Oh, I do. We had some good times. So a diversity really of manufacturing, and I was very lucky. He was a great mentor. So it just became part of my DNA. Yeah,
well, it certainly is in your DNA. Before we get a little bit more of your backstory, this is going out in January 2021. It's fair to say that 2020 has been, well, let's use the word challenging, unprecedented, and all the other phrases that have been used. What's your take on the headline state of play for UK manufacturing as we sort of enter another year? Where do you think UK manufacturing sits at the moment?
We've got a very, very strong manufacturing base in the UK. And I think that we do not promote it as we should. I have great optimism for manufacturing going forward. I don't really buy into the rhetoric around everything will be reshored. I don't think that's possible now. The supply chains are so different. But I do believe that with the enthusiasm and the passion, that we can continue to build the manufacturing sector. I think when you listen to the press, you're of the impression that the manufacturing sector's on its knees and there's nothing in there and there's lots of redundancies. Actually, you know, in the Leeds area, there are over 1,800, almost 2,000 manufacturing companies.
Wow.
You know, employing over 24,000 people. So we have these very strong manufacturing bases, and I am very optimistic, regardless, you know, of the ridiculous B word. I feel that we will find a way through it, regardless of how the politicians react.
One of the things that gets me about those stats and the strength is why we're not getting the press coverage for that, for manufacturing. Why is it always we only ever get doom and gloom on the news anyway, but there's been some fabulous stories this year of success, and there's been some fabulous stories of businesses, you know, growing in a pandemic and employing more people and creating, you know, apprenticeship programs and all sorts of stuff. So is there any body, like a trade body or organization, responsible for getting that message out there that's maybe missing that?
That's an interesting question. We are one of the very few trade bodies we're associated with is Make UK, which is the old EES. So that's the national body for manufacturing companies in the UK. The biggest problem we have at the moment is that we have a government who is not backing manufacturing. They have little knowledge of it. They have a completely different strategy around growth for the UK, and it doesn't include manufacturing. So Make UK are working very hard at, and Stephen Phipson in particular, in representing manufacturing. But it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle at the moment.
Can I be cynical and say, and it might be wrong, but the observation is, I don't work in manufacturing, I've got a number of manufacturing clients, is manufacturing feels geographically northern heavily based, compared to, there's lots of pockets of engineering excellence in the Oxfordshire area for, sort of Formula One. There's lots of stuff around the Midlands, but is it because it's dirty and blue collar and a bit northern that you're not getting the support, you think, from the government who don't understand it?
Difficult question. I think there's definitely an image problem. I don't think anyone would deny that. But you'll know, I'm chair of the Leeds Manufacturing Alliance. We organise the Leeds Manufacturing Festival, and the idea is to actually bring up to date 21st century manufacturing to young people. And it's really interesting. I was at when we could do things, we were at the Apprenticeship Fair earlier this year as the Manufacturing Alliance, and genuinely we had about 12 manufacturing companies in the area talking to all these apprentices. Generally the parents didn't want the kids involved in manufacturing.
Wow.
And they were walking past me. Well, they didn't get past me really because I stopped them, but so I think there's definitely an image problem. But if you think about all the cutting edge manufacturing that we do in this country, and especially around the big names, Rolls-Royce, BAE, and etc., there are some enormous, fantastic innovation going on in this country that just isn't supported by the government at the moment.
But we've always been world leading, haven't we, in terms of innovation and product design and all that kind of thing. And it used to be, and I don't know if it's still the case, that the Union Jack on a manufactured piece of equipment stood for something. Is that still the case, Tracey? Does that still sort of resonate globally, that UK manufacturing is perceived better externally than it is internally?
There is still kudos around the British flag, and there's no doubt about that. My fear is that we're hanging on to history, if you like, rather than creating. I think for too long we've been a little complacent. There are some incredibly clever people around the world. And innovation isn't just the British, and that worries me a little bit. But I think that we are, especially during this pandemic, we've proven, especially in the manufacturing sector, that we can innovate. I hate the word pivot, but the truth is a lot of manufacturing companies were able to do that. And we have the capability. I think the British Union Jack is still extremely well respected. I think we need to live up to that.
Okay, that's an interesting perception then in terms of how that looks. What I would say to you is, let's take the global pandemic as it stands. I have talked to a number of manufacturing clients who said that because of supply chain challenges and because of problems with, getting product from where their normal routes have been through, Far East or Eastern Europe or whatever, a lot of companies, through no other alternative, had to look to UK manufacturing. Has that been sustained? Is that sustainable? Do you think people will return to their old, cheap and offshore ways? What's your view on kind of, those businesses that have helped other organisations out by being available, by producing goods effectively, quickly, to good standard. Obviously, from a price point, probably slightly more expensive than they would have been traditionally. What's your view on that sustainability of that as a relationship? And that can only be good for UK manufacturing if it is, sustainable, I guess.
There are two aspects of it, and the first is really a more global one, and I am absolutely an advocate of collaboration. There's far more to be gained by manufacturing companies working together than seeing each other as competitors. So, I think there is value in that. What my knowledge sits with electronics, and the bottom line is there are no electronic component manufacturers in the UK. We are always going to have to source, and mainly from the Far East. That's not going to stop. They are incredibly good in the Far East at manufacturing PCBs, printed circuit boards. We can do it here in the UK, and we do it here in the UK. But most PCB manufacturers have partners in the Far East. Right. Okay. So I think there is something around that ship to some extent has sailed. There are some, of course, there will always be some routes that can be reshored. But when we're talking about the fundamentals of my supply chain, that's not going to come from the UK.
No. So how did the pandemic affect you then at Dell Tech, from access to resources and parts to complete your manufacturing process? It must have been a hell of a shock to the system when we literally shut down the country for certainly in the first 4 or 5 weeks from March. It slightly opened up from there, but how did that affect you?
Well, you'll probably remember this. I was on in February. A number of news organisations asked to talk to me about how it was affecting us, and it was mid-Feb. I was like, I'm the idiot that said it's all okay. Don't worry about it. My supply chains are intact. Which amuses me very much, given what happened. Within a month, we were in lockdown. Actually, I think there were a couple of things that were in our favour. Some of it was around Brexit that didn't happen the year before, where people had restocked, were holding surplus stock. We had taken a strategy to ensure our supply chain was as resilient as possible by using very strong distribution channels. Although historically we'd used hundreds of suppliers of different components, we actually narrowed that right down and just looked at very strong supply chains. And because of that didn't affect us. What did affect us was the way it was announced.
I think that's been a real problem. It's not really a political podcast, but I think, and they're making up as they go along because they're getting advice that changes on a day-to-day basis. I'm not sure that we would say that any other a group of people would have done things any differently or any better. We don't know, but it's that stop-start change of policy. We're open, we're not open, we're tier 1, tier 4, we're having a lockdown, partial lockdown. Then you've got Scotland, Wales, Ireland doing different things. It has been a complete and utter mess of communication, I guess. So, when you're trying to manage a supply chain and a product manufacturing process, if things aren't aligned, any one gap in there is going to cause you problems, isn't it, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. And it went a bit further than that, really, in terms of staff coming back into the building. And in fact, as part of the Leeds Manufacturing Alliance, so there's about a number of manufacturers made videos that we put through social media about, don't worry about coming back to work. This is what we've done. We're making it safe for you. Which was, we had really good reception around that, because we really felt that there was, for people that had been on furlough, there was a fear of coming back to work. So not only did we have to worry about the supply chain, we had to worry about bringing people back in the building, and keeping them safe while they were here, because there was, we were all in uncharted waters.
But the other thing with that, though, Tracey, is, you're in a sector and you represent a sector, as you say, in terms of the Leeds Manufacturing Alliance, etc. You're in a sector that you can't work from home. You can't do what you do. I mean, some of the admin and the central services and maybe IT and things can be run remotely, but you're making stuff in a factory environment, and you've got the machinery and the tools to do that. But you can't just take them home and I'll sit in my bedroom and convert that, can you? So how quickly did you respond to that opportunity to bring people back, and how quickly did you get up to a production level where you were thinking, we're still in the game here? Then, what was the middle bit of 2020 like for you?
Where we actually made the decision to close for May, because the majority of our customers either cancelled orders or delayed them, which gave us a little bit of breathing space. And as soon as we saw the door was open to get people back in, we worked really hard at risk assessments, walking it through, and bringing some confidence back in. I mean, it's even my own family were saying, well, can't you, does everybody really have to work? I said, I can't give people a bag of bits and say, go home and try and make something.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
And nor does let's pivot. Well, pivot to what? We're a manufacturer. That's what we do. So
a lot of people sort of were asked to, and I won't use the P word because it's one that I don't like as much as you clearly don't like it either, but a lot of people moved into things like PPE manufacturing and those kind of stuff. But I think a lot of them got the fingers burned because they were promised that the government would buy their equipment, but then they realised it wasn't CE marked, and then there was all sorts of challenges around that. So the dreaded P word didn't work out for everybody who jumped on that particular support. And I'm not saying it's bandwagon. The government were asking for it, weren't they? But then they didn't really live up to that. But let's talk about more positive things, okay? You're passionate about changing perception of the sector. You mentioned earlier parents might be the stumbling block or a potential stumbling block. Is that down to anything other than historic perception of manufacturing? And what are you and what are the sector doing to re-educate those parents? Because I've got a friend who's got a son who's on a Rolls-Royce apprenticeship as a mechanical engineer, and he is absolutely flying. Literally, he's loving it. He's earning good money. He's learning. He's being put through university. There's loads, and you look at it and go, well, isn't that a brilliant output? And he got that job on his own. He got that apprenticeship on his own. Why? What are you doing about that as a sector? And is there anything we can do collectively to promote manufacturing as a really good career option?
I think there's a number of things, because it's not just around, it's definitely about the influencers around young people and the influences at parents, grandparents, and the education system. So unfortunately, this is a very sweeping statement, but most teachers and influencers in the education setting have no understanding of SMEs or manufacturing. So whereas they might say, oh, that's a really good idea, go for an apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce, that sounds marvellous. They would no sooner say, have you had a look at any manufacturing companies around here? Yeah. And because there is a perception that manufacturing is dirty, and you put a big name like Rolls-Royce around it and suddenly it's marvellous. But
it's sexy, isn't it, Rolls-Royce, as opposed to not being sexy if it's, Dell Tech.
Correct, absolutely. Absolutely. And, and I think there's also a misunderstanding that actually these companies also need all the wraparound services with it. We need sales, we need accountancy, we need everything else as well as the manufacturing. And I think we're trying very hard through the Leeds Manufacturing Festival. We've had pretty good success. It's more difficult this year, of course it is, because we're doing it by video, and you can't. I'm absolutely fed up, like most people are, of these damn Zoom meetings, just because I'm a people person, and you miss that behaviour, you miss that contact, and it's difficult to reach out to young people because they're looking at the phone or whatever, and they're not interested.
Historically, you'll have had potentially, or certainly some of the manufacturers would have had school visits, wouldn't they, to show them what a manufacturing process and operation looks like. And yeah, I remember about 100 years ago going on a few of them. I went to ICI on a visit. I'm from the Northeast and went to ICI for a visit, and you're sort of looking at it with wide eyes thinking, well, I had no idea this went on, and I had no idea this is what this was about, and whatever. Obviously you can't do that at the moment. Has that always been part of the sort of engagement piece, is bring them in, show them, get them, to have a look and a feel at what it looks like?
Yeah, that's absolutely what the intention of the Leeds Manufacturing Festival was. Actually, we struggled with that because the schools don't want to do the visits. They want us.
There'll be a health and safety officer, won't there, somewhere saying, oh, I don't know, we need a risk assessment. We need to know the inside leg measurement of everybody, everyone who works at the place needs a full CRB check. We can't possibly put our young people at risk. And I get risk assessments and I get health and safety, but at the end of the day, you could easily put on a safe, interesting and fascinating visit to Dell Tech, couldn't you? But someone's got to buy into that. The school to say it's a good thing to do, isn't it?
That's absolutely true. I'm also an enterprise advisor with the LEP, and one of the problems with the schools is that they have a remit and they now have key deliverables, and that's not getting the kids out into visits.
Right. So that doesn't tick an Ofsted box, or it doesn't meet the requirement they're going to get measured on. That's a hell of a shame, isn't it, really?
I mean, there was a change about a couple of years ago, and if I'm right, the Gatsby benchmarks and around what the schools had to deliver and how they could, the children have to have a number of touch points with the outside world and with career things. And that certainly helped. We've had great success touching young people, and you're right, Nick. I cannot tell you how heartwarming, and I'm not sure that's the right word, when you see young people come in and look around our building and just are in awe, and we didn't know you did that. I didn't know this even happened. How can this happen, in Leeds?
Big wide eyes, jaw drop, from the outside. I don't know what goes on in that building, but I'm about to find out. So, well, let's hope 2021 gets to a stage where that can happen again. Let's hope that schools see the light in terms of their responsibilities to students to say, what are your career options? I'm a parent. One of my daughter's at university at the moment. She's going to university second year. She's in second year doing psychology. She has to have a degree for the job that she wants. But that's not the be all and end all route, is it? It doesn't have to be that route. Why do you have to go to university? Why do 75% of people go to university instead of, going into a job or a role through an apprenticeship scheme? It is perception reality. It is probably about, perceived value, isn't it, really? Or when if I go to university, I have a university experience. If I go to work, I'm just going to work. There's a whole education piece there, isn't there?
Absolutely, and it's really interesting that graduates also have really got a bit of a bad press in manufacturing because they come out and they don't have any skills. But that's slowly starting to change, and we've got a young guy here who's doing a degree in electronics and works on the shop floor 2 days a week, as well as doing his degree, which he expects to get a first in. So he will be super employable. Please God, we can keep him because, he has all the skills that you need, the theory and the practical. And sometimes I think that's underrated.
Do you work with the higher education, so the sixth form colleges and the universities themselves, in terms of any curriculum content or any, support for, just literally promoting manufacturing then? What are you doing around that then, Trace?
We're involved with Leeds City College.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we've got an apprentice from there, and really good providers. And the UTC, of course.
Mm-hmm. And what's the UTC?
It's the Technical College in Leeds.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's they only take children, I think it's from 14 onwards. And and they only do, they're very much based around engineering. It's a fabulous place. If you ever get the opportunity to go down and see it, it's next to Brame. Just marvelous place, because the kids are going in there and wanting, so it's a vocational type of education at the side of traditional education.
They still have to do GCSEs in the other subjects as well? Or?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I've got to say, they have a very different approach. So the days are longer. The kids are at school for a long working day as opposed to a short day. So they come out with a better, all work experience I've had from there have been really good, because they want to do it.
And they've probably got a work ethic that's been bred into them because of the...
Yeah, it is. It's just, this is the way you behave. And I'm also involved with Leeds University Business School with their external contact and communications, because we need to embrace it. You know, I think historically there's been a little bit of reticence around manufacturing and academia.
I think it probably has. What I would say is, we talked a lot about Leeds and West Yorkshire and your individual passion for that. What would you say to anyone listening who is in a manufacturing role, maybe an MD of a business, and who are working in the UK? What do you think they could be doing more, or should be thinking about, or helping to promote the sector and to give back into the community, in terms of saying, look, there is an option here. Is there enough being done by other people, or is it one of those where volunteers put their hand up and then they get stuck into it? And if you're not a volunteering type, you're never going to make a difference. Is that how it works?
Of course, that's part of it. But I think that we have the gift of social media. And you have to have a passion, and you have to want to promote the manufacturing sector. I genuinely absolutely love it. The fact we make something every day, different products for different people, and our success is based on other people's success, I think is absolutely marvelous. So I just want to shout about it. And I want to tell people. You
can't help yourself though, Trace, with that, can you? And I think that definitely shines through. Do you have counterparts in other areas, so South Yorkshire, the West Midlands, or whatever, who you regularly communicate with, meet, Zoom, dreaded Zoom, whatever, to see best practice? Because you'll be doing some great stuff in Leeds, but somebody might be doing some fabulous stuff in Norfolk or whatever. How does best practice around the manufacturing sector get shared in terms of promotion and changing perception and all that kind of thing?
I'll tell you who is absolutely fantastic is Make UK.
Right.
And the regional director, June Smith, is absolutely fantastic advocate, and Annette Hobson. They are marvellous at making sure that best practice is shared. And to some extent, Nick, that's not my job.
No.
And you have to have a willingness to it for it. And I don't have an end goal, if you like. I just want to tell everybody I love manufacturing.
Yeah. Well,
and I think it's really important that we do share best practice, and there are trade organisations like the Chamber and Make UK who are able to do that and enable that communication with each other and allow collaboration, which is, I'm a great believer in you can always learn from somebody if you just listen. I'm not very good at that, though.
That's the impatience that you've got, though, isn't it? I guess sometimes you want to be getting onto it'd be remiss of us to do a podcast on UK manufacturing at the end of December for a January release without mentioning the dreaded B word. As we record this, we've already got queues of lorries on the M2. Dover's shut. People don't want to interact with people from the UK because of a new strain of COVID. So what do you see as the impact of a combination of, almost a perfect storm of shit, really, and I will use that word, Brexit and COVID hitting and impacting, what's the impact of that going to be? And is there anything that UK businesses and manufacturers can do?
It's a
Sorry,
nightmare,
that's a
isn't it?
depressing question. That's
Well,
a
it is.
depressing question. I couldn't not ask it though, Tracey.
No. Let's pretend it's not bloody happening, because I think that's what the rest are doing. I mean, look, we're facing, especially SMEs, we're facing completely uncertain times. Are we preparing for it? What the hell are we preparing for? Nobody else knows. So my strategy is to keep my head down and control what I can control. Look after our supply chain. Will we be affected? I have no doubt we will be. And will we have to problem solve our way out of it? Yes, I would have thought so. I think by the mess that's happened this week, with all the trucks sat still for the poor drivers, nobody thought about them.
No.
I think that there will inevitably be problems. If we can't even deal with that, we're going to be in big trouble come the 1st of January. And
it's not like we didn't see the lorry problem coming. It's not like we didn't understand what was going to happen, and yet we don't seem to have planned for it. This strikes me. I'm a big football fan. It strikes me that it's a bit like the transfer window. The transfer window is open for 2.5 months, and on the very last evening before the 11 o'clock deadline, there are people moving players around at last second, from one club to another, that they've had 2.5 months to sort out, and then they're running to bombing ahead, all guns blazing at 5 to 11 before the 11 p.m. deadline. It strikes me a little bit like that. But once you get past the deadline, we are where we are, aren't we? And I really like your attitude of control what I can control. The rest of it will take care of itself. Do you think as a UK manufacturing base, there's enough of that kind of spirit around? Are some people, ready for the fight and up for it, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all are. We don't have any options. There are no options in front of us. We haven't been given a good strategy. We haven't been given, in my opinion, the leadership that we should have been. And to leave not just the manufacturing sector, but the rest of the country unsure as to what happens. And you're right, Nick. What will happen is they'll come out at 10 to midnight and say, "Don't worry, we've done a deal." And everybody will say, "But what does that mean?" And nobody will know. It's nonsense. And but the bottom line is we are not in control of that. That is happening somewhere else. It's way out of our control now. So what we need to do is come back, look at what we can control, and how can we de-risk as much as possible.
Excellent. I think some of the stuff that we've learned in COVID will stand us in good stead for the dreaded B word, because we have had unprecedented and very quickly changing scenarios thrown at everyone during certainly March, April and May. If you think back to March, April and May, no one knew a damn thing, did we? We didn't know what it was, how long it was going to last, what the impact was going to be, whether social distancing was with us for the rest of our lives, all that stuff. We didn't know anything at that stage. We've learned as we've gone along. And I think the dreaded B word is probably going to be similar to that process. So I guess the key to this is Q1 2021, get through what you can get through and keep just revisited. And hopefully by Easter, the world will look a bit different. Would that be your mantra for a New Year's resolution, really, Trace?
No, we've discussed this at Dell Tech, and that's absolutely our strategy. Q1 21 is about just staying stable, just making sure that we've put a lot of work in, like every other company that's come out of this. We've dug really deep into everything we do and where we are, and it's really important that those foundations, we build on those foundations, and we'll be ready for growth. Ultimately that's what will happen.
And are you confident that growth is on the agenda at some? I mean, you probably don't know exactly when, but growth's on your agenda at some stage in 2021.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we'll be doing. And we'll be looking very carefully at the new markets that are emerging and put a very detailed strategy together in the first quarter. They're absolutely roller coaster, isn't it? We'll be on the way up. And I listened to a very clever economist, Roger Martin Fagg, who has come out and has said he believes that, you know, the second half of 21 will be boom time.
Right. Well, you know, these guys and ladies have paid the big bucks to tell us what they've done from their research and analysis. So, Tracey, on that positive note, we're going to sort of end the podcast, but I'm going to share with those who view this rather than listen to it on audio. Those who don't know, the podcast is available on all the usual podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And also it's hosted on the IMPACTUS group website. My contact details for myself, but more importantly, my fabulous guest, Tracey, here, and they'll all be on the episode notes on whichever platform that you choose to consume the content from. But it just goes to say, Tracey, thank you for absolutely sharing that clear DNA passion for manufacturing. I hope the sector continues to benefit from your, input, drive, enthusiasm, and commitment. I hope Q1 2021 isn't as painful as we fear it might be, but I can't wait to see you continuing to thrive and grow in the second half of 2021, if that's what the economists are saying. So, Tracey, thanks for being a fabulous guest. I'm sure you've inspired many, many listeners with your passion and energy. Let's hope we can start to educate people that manufacturing is the place to be and what you should be investing in. So thank you very much for your time, Trace.
Thank you, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Excellent. Okay, stay safe, stay well.